I want to know what scene and what role. I mean, what were you doing in this documentary?
I was only 12 years old, but we were I was standing on the hill behind Reverend Ball when he was speaking to the crowd. But it was an experience that nobody should have to. That nobody should have to go through. But my mom was a single parent. I'll just say this and I'll make it quick. She was a single parent. And there, I was the oldest of 11. 2 died at birth, so I was the oldest of 9. And when the marches started, or when the gatherings started, we asked my mom, there was 3 of us that were there, myself, my sister next to me, and this sister, she's the 3rd one, if we could participate. And she said, sure. And we went to every march. We were at Beulah, we were at Bright Star, we were at Macedon, we were everywhere, and especially on the St. Catherine Street area. But the thing I remember most is the day that we marched, because you could just feel the tension in the air. And when we got to Beulah Baptist Church, and Reverend Baldwin, Mr. Evers, Reverend Russell, I remember all of these people, you know, we thought I was small. They said, well, we're going to march today. So as soon as we came outside of the church and got on the sidewalk, we had not even gone, what do you say, 10 steps. The paddy wagons came. And they started pushing us in the paddy wagon. So they brought us all down to the city auditorium. Then they separated us into groups. And then the officers started going around asking us our names and how old we were and things like that. And we told them, now, let me tell you something funny about me. I didn't tell them what my real last name. I don't know why. I was scared. I gave them, I don't even remember the last name that I gave them. But at any rate, they started separating us, and we didn't know what they were going to do, but I know then some more buses came. They started moving some of us out. Now, like I said, I was the oldest of my siblings. My sibling next to me was 11. She went to Parchment. We went to the Adams County Jail, and they kept us in all night. I was the last person to leave out of the jail because they didn't have my last name. My mom had come down, but and the officer came up and asked me again. He said, what did you tell me? What is your last name? Then I told him, and he said, okay, you can come on out with your mama. She'll pick you up. But my sister that went to Parchment, she doesn't even like to talk about the experience. She doesn't.
11?
She was 11.
I have to tell you about her.
And remind us your name.
My name is Patricia Dixon Carroll.
Thank you, Miss Carroll.
And the one that, my sister that went to Parchment, I was right next to her. And what she did, she lied about her age. See, they grouped us according to our ages. And she told them, she gave her right date of birth, but she gave the wrong year. She gave the correct year, but they were so ignorant, they didn't do the math. And she told them she was about 20 years old. So that's the reason she was sent to Parchment. And I was younger. Pat went to jail. I stayed at the city auditorium.
Oh, okay.
I didn't go to jail because I was the youngest one, and they kept the younger ones at the city auditorium, and our parents had to come and pick us up. But that's the reason, that's the story behind the younger sister that went to Parchment. So that's the reason why she went.
And your name is?
Rosetta Fleming. Rosetta Dixon Fleming.
Thank you, Miss Fleming. Thank you. I had to ask that question right off the bat because we were watching unedited history there, and to know we had someone here. Anyone else in the movie? Was anyone else in the movie? We'll talk about other things in a minute.
Later, I was in a vehicle, those 3 Jeeps that you saw.
Yes. Really? Well, hold on. Let me bring I'm double fisting microphones here. One's for Facebook and one's for our audio here in the room. Hey, it's so good seeing you here.
Mayor, I'm just answering your question. We were about 15, 16 years old, but my grandmother lived at the other end of St. Catherine Street, and we didn't really know what was going on. She said there was a whole commotion going on at the other end, which was down towards Pine. But I was in a vehicle, those 3 Jeeps with the National Guard in there. We were right behind them.
Wow.
And we were told not to come back down the street.
Wow.
But we didn't really know what was going on. The young people, 15, 17 years old, didn't know anything too much about the Klan. I saw a cross burning one time in Liberty Ballpark about 1964, but we were scared to death when we saw it. And we didn't hear much about the 16 points, especially that what the Mayor Nasser and the aldermen were trying to do then. But I think what it didn't say, eventually the proposal that the NAACP gave the mayor and board, they accepted it. Mm-hmm. And it was either 12 points or 12 points. And to me, that was the beginning of Natchez growing together.
That's wonderful.
Now, 5 years later, I was drafted in the Army, and I was in there with Philip West and a whole about 25 black guys from Natchez, and we're still good friends.
That's wonderful. Remind us your name.
Henry Watts.
Henry Watts. And Henry's a former supervisor also here in Adams County. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, Mayor.
Thank you. Did we have anyone else who was in the movie? Yes? Okay. We're going to get to Mr. Case in just 1 minute, and we're going to have more general discussion in a minute, but this is about the folks in the movie.
Yes, Father Morrissey was our pastor, and he had to ask our parents twice for us to integrate Cathedral School. So at the same time that was going on, we were living it, integrating Cathedral School. And we also know that the meetings that they were having, when she said we're in the hall, they were in Holy Family Catholic Hall. Mm-hmm. So from the late 50s to early 60s, the NAACP, under the leadership of George Metcalf, met at Holy Family Catholic Hall with Father Morrissey, Marjorie Baroni, Miss Mamie Bazik, and Charles Evers, along with those pastors.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Alderwoman. Did we have? And this is Alderwoman Valencia Hall and Sister Naomi. And did we have someone else who was going to speak about someone in the movie, or?
I wasn't in the movie.
Yes.
But I did like those two. We did march without a.
Yes.
Both
of them. One's for Facebook and one's for.
I remember the evening that we marched out of the building, and like they said there, we was only right at the corner building and MLK, and the paddy wagons pulled up, and they took most of us, me myself. I went to the auditorium. It was crowded, real crowded. But the fact remains is, you look at stuff like this and your mind goes back. And sometimes it's hard to relieve your mind of things that happen. And the reason I say that is because me and my wife, we left here young. But being back in Natchez, I'm going to be honest, it's a flashback for me.
Yes.
Being young and being experienced with that, it's kind of hard.
Gotta be.
But we all need healing. And when we talk about healing, we can't have no one side, y'all.
That's right.
It's got to be everybody.
That's right.
Healing is good for the soul.
And your name?
James Perry Duck.
Thank you, Mr. Duck.
Yeah.
Thank you. Y'all, what a great build up to hearing from Mr. Jim Cage. This is amazing. You know, it's evenings like this that help us in telling the stories and having true healing. And so thank you for sharing that, Mr. Duck. Jim, some of you came in after the earlier introduction, so I'll share it, and it's a little awkward. We're having two microphones here, but we have individuals watching online, and for those online, we just finished seeing a movie called Black Natchez. That is a documentary from 1966, and we are sharing the link, so you can watch that movie online. We have the permission to do that. That movie tells the story, unedited. You're a fly on the wall listening to historic conversations from 1966. Mr. Cates actually arrived in Mississippi in 1964 when he was 19 as part of Freedom Summer, and came to Natchez by the summer of the next year, 1965. And it was then that he unfortunately encountered the worst of Natchez, threatened by the Ku Klux Klan, arrested. And he can tell that story. He has only been back to Natchez once, very briefly in 1984. So we're really honored to have Jim with us tonight. And another thank you to my friend Nick Walters, who is an adjunct professor of history at Mississippi College. We've been friends 30 years, and thank you, Nick, for making this possible through the work you're doing at Mississippi College in teaching history. And so, Jim, I'm going to hand one mic to you, and I'll hold the other one.
Do I actually need a microphone? Are there people who can
you might. And for the people in the back, I would suggest it.
Okay, I don't like using microphones, actually. Now, the mayor here has been very kind, and he started out exactly the way I was going to start out, just asking people. So we've covered all of that, and we've done that, so I guess I can go home now.
We're going to do more of that. That's just a promise.
But I can go on and talk and lecture, but I don't like doing that. I'm more interested in back and forth. I'm more interested in conversation. I'm more interested in knowing what you're doing and what you want to know about the work that we did than I am in just telling you about it. So I'm going to just say very, very briefly sort of what I was doing here. And then I'm going to stop and depend on you back and forth. I had worked with what's now called Freedom Summer in 1964, and I'd worked in the northern part of the state, in the northern part of the Delta. But I had originally trained to come down to the Southwest, but during the summer of '64, I never got to the Southwest. And in 1965, when I came back to Jackson, I was planning on going back to the North Delta. But in Jackson, I met with someone whom I think we should all take a few minutes to remember, and that's Dory Ladner, one of the wonderful SNCC staff people who died this spring. And Dory said, "Look, Jim, you were trained for the Southwest. We need you in Natchez. Will you come to Natchez?" So instead of going back up to the Delta that summer, I came here. Now, my work here was a little bit different from what I had done the summer before. The summer before, I'd been doing a lot of voter registration, going door to door for that. Here was a lot more community organization. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party had already established sort of its basis, working, as you saw in the film, sometimes cooperatively and sometimes a little edgily with the NAACP. We were sort of trying to find the points where we could be most useful in getting people to organize together. And the work that I wound up focusing on with one other fellow was trying to organize steam laundry workers. Now, I don't know, anyone here have family that was in the steam laundries in the 60s?
My mother worked at the Natchez steam laundry.
Yeah, well, you probably heard what the conditions were like there then. No water breaks, no rest breaks, no air conditioning in the steam laundries, long hours. And so, that's what we were trying to do, and we were holding meetings to try to get the steam laundry workers to organize. The other big thing that was going on was, and a lot of some of the women working were doing more of this side of it, and you saw two of the women in the movie, Edie Black and Posey Lombard, where we're starting to work with the charity hospital, trying to get conditions in the charity hospitals improved. So while I was here, the few weeks, I wasn't here all that long, but the few weeks that I was here, those were the big organizing attempts that we were involved in. And I guess from that point, I'll say the anecdote that you keep referring to, and then we'll turn it over. What happened was, we knew both within the black community and in the white community that people were watching us closely and paying attention to us. And the idea behind organizing the steam laundry workers is that we were having meetings that were clandestine meetings. There were meetings when they couldn't be outed as having been at the meetings, or they would have lost their jobs. So what happened was, the Klan was pretty active in Natchez at that time. There was actually two Klan groups that were sort of also contesting with each other. Sort of the other side of the thing between NAACP and FDP was sort of this. But all of a sudden, the partner, Mitch Gerfield, who was working with me with the laundry workers, suddenly were arrested on a charge of having chased two 11-year-old kids through Duncan Park with knives. Now, first of all, supposedly we had driven up there in a white station wagon to do this, and I didn't drive. The white station wagon, in fact, that they were talking about was the station wagon that belonged to Ed Pincus and Dave Newman, who were making the movie. Ed was my brother-in-law. And the whole thing set up was that the time we were supposed to have been chasing these kids in Duncan Park with knives was at a time when we were in a secret meeting with the laundry workers. And clearly the idea was we were supposed to be arrested, go before and say, oh, but we've got a perfect alibi, we weren't there, look at all these people who could say where we were. Which of course would have done what? It would have destroyed our whole organizing effort. And we were actually prepared to perjure ourselves and say we were at a staff meeting. A whole group was prepared to perjure ourselves because we were not going to out the laundry workers. We came up for trial. I'll never forget the court. I have forgotten the judge's name. People know it. I'll never forget the courtroom. The front row was lined with white men wearing guns. And the two 11-year-old boys got up. One of them, you know the name, one of them was McDaniels. The name familiar? I would love to talk to them. I would love to see those kids again. I'd love to meet with them.
Could you explain the connection for some who may not know?
He was the son of one of the Klan leaders. He was the son of one of the Klan leaders. And they gave their testimony.
The Grand Wizard is that not?
Yeah. And they gave their testimony. And I remember I turned to the lawyer and I said, boy, they really sound believable. And the lawyer just looked right back at me and he said, men have been hanged on testimony like that. This was not reassuring. But the judge, and I wish I could remember his name, and he deserves to be honored. He was elected white judge who heard that evidence, and he said, there's no case here, and he dismissed it before we had to say anything at all.
Wow. Was it Judge Keir?
As I say, I don't remember his. I don't think I know whether I even knew his name at the time. There's a follow-up to that too, though. There are actually two follow-ups. One is that there were two cases that came up right after ours, which were very, very minor cases, which are sort of also kind of trumped up civil rights cases. And both of those he came down with quick convictions on. He had to, preserve. He let us off, but he couldn't. The other thing is I heard that he lost the next time he came up for election. I'm not, again, I don't. But the result was from that we were staying at the Freedom House on Franklin Street, which is where we lived, and there was tremendous pressure being put on the house, on the Freedom House, by Klan's people circling, the rioters circling. The front windows had already been shot out a long time before. And in fact, one of our workers in the house, he used to sleep on the couch right under the front windows. Right under the front windows. And he said, I always did that because that's the safest place if someone's going to... But anyway, there was a couple of nights went by, and it was getting tenser and tenser and tenser. And I'll tell you this story. We were trying to sleep. We were all pretending trying to sleep. And was circling around outside. And we're all pretending, we're all lying there, and all of a sudden the guy Rick Hall, who was sleeping on the couch under the window, suddenly this quavering voice goes, "We shall all be killed. We shall all be..." And you know what? It broke the tension. From then on, we were back on top. But the tension was mounting. And the project was feeling that Mitch and I had become a lightning rod. And so at that point, much earlier than we had intended to, they said, it's better for the whole project if you two just leave Natchez. So I was in Natchez even for less time than I expected. I left. I had planned to come back at Christmas time from my college. I was a sophomore in college, a freshman. I guess junior year in college, but no, sophomore. But I was planning to come back, but family things got in the way, and I actually literally by minutes missed my ride back to Natchez with Posey Lombard coming down from Massachusetts. Literally by minutes. And it was 19 years before I came back to Natchez. So that's my story. And I'd love to... Please. I was a volunteer. I was white. I could come in and I could walk away. If you want to applaud people, the people who are heroes are the people that you saw in that film and the people who are here tonight. Amen. The people who day by day lived the story and continue to live the story. And those are the people who need to be honored. We are nothing who can come and go. So,
amen. So well said. Jim, would you, I see someone who has a response. At this time, what I'll do is bring this microphone over to you, and we'll...
I was in that film.
You were?
Yeah, also I went to party.
Really?
Yeah.
Could you tell us what part of the film you were in?
Oh, the part that when the National Guard going by,
Yes.
up to the on St. Catherine.
Yeah.
I was in that film.
Wow.
Right. Also, I went to party.
How old were you?
Around about 24 years old, something like that. Mm-hmm. And you don't hear about what happened at the party?
Yes.
Okay, when I went to party, when we went there, that they threw us in a line, and what it say when 13 step out. Now it's difficult. You got a whole lot of people in line. 14 step out, they'll beat them. That's what they do. But anyway, when we carry inside, it's terrifying what I'm going to tell you. When they took it inside the apartment, made a strip of clothes off, buck naked. And then what it did then, it give us some stuff, look something like milkshake. And we drank it, and then it'll clean you out, your bowel.
It's awful.
And I'm going to tell you a terrifying situation. It would aid us in a cell about 6 by 6. About from here to there. And 8 people in there. And what it did is it was already cold and turn the air conditioner on. And then what it did then, couldn't everybody use the commode.
Right.
And we had to walk around in human species. Right.
Awful.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it terrified the people come along, had women thing come along, we were buck naked, come along, see her, and they say a buck naked.
It's horrible.
It was terrifying, harassing.
How long were you there?
3 days.
3 days.
And in 3 days, I didn't sleep. You couldn't sleep for you study move, because you stop moving, you probably freeze to death.
I'm so sorry. No one
Right.
should ever have been treated
Yeah, it's terrifying.
with that
Right.
horrible,
Yeah, it was horrible, terrifying.
hateful treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And your name?
Robert Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Madison. Thank you for sharing.
Right,
that.
okay.
Yes. Okay. I'm going to make my way back here. Can everyone hear, or do I need the other microphone also? Y'all are okay. Okay.
Yes, I went to Parchment. And I wasn't in the film, but I was looking for my mom and my husband at the time. I went to Parchment. Came out to church, as everyone is saying, and they loaded the sin. And my mom had told me, because she was an activist and my aunt, and I had a young baby, so I had never been to her. So she said, Helena, I'm going to let you go out tonight, but don't let them put you on the bus because you have the baby. So we came out to church, bro. They was lining up everyone in the bus, brought us to the auditorium, and we was there for hours and hours, not knowing anything. They wasn't telling us anything. Then later they gave us a cup of Kool-Aid and a cold cheese sandwich. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, they lined us up. It was October, I never forget, because it was just so cold and rainy. And they lined us up on the buses. We did not know where we were going. They didn't tell us where we was going. And as we drove the highways and all, it was just so dark and all. And all I'm thinking is, I'm never going to see my 6-week-old baby again. I'm never going to see my mom again. I'm never going to see my dad. So when we got there, they loaded everyone off. They separated the men from the ladies. And they had the dogs lined up. It was drizzling rain, like I said, October. And they told us if we just make a move, one little move, that the dogs was going to eat our asses up. So, as we were so afraid to even move a finger or anything, they took us inside. And like he was saying, they had someone to, being young and never been to jail or whatever, they had someone, I guess they called it, to frisk you, just to search you, and that was awful. And after that, they gave us a cup of milk, like he was saying, about this tall, a white cup. And we didn't know we was made to drink it, and it was a laxative. They separated us, as I was saying. They put 12 of us, 12 women in one cell. It was one toilet, one iron bed. The windows that was over us, they opened those windows up so that the cold air in the rain could come inside. And then they threw one roll of tissue paper in the cell. Some of us had to tear clothes. Some of us, the ladies that was a little older than us, said we used a corner for just to be in, a corner for the waist. And we had to be there. We had to sleep there. I was there 3 days and 2 nights. And it was just horrible. They brought our men out in the cold weather, buck naked, had the dogs on them. It was just, it was awful. It was awful. And it's just, I still can see it. I still, because I was an activist then.
for black registration to vote.
And how old were you?
I was 19 at the
19.
time. I was 19.
How did it feel when you were reunited with your baby?
Oh, just wonderful. I thought I would never put him down. I would never, just never turn him loose, just to be back home with my mom and my dad and him.
And your name?
Helen White. I was Helen Smith at the time, and my name is down at at the auditorium. Proud to take a stand. So,
Thank you, Ms. Goodness. I'll come back around to you. I kind of have become, I don't know, I reminded, I guess, a little levity. I feel like Phil Donahue right now.
Our father worked at IP, International Paper Company. Some blacks worked at Armstrong, but he was at IP. And once we integrated Cathedral, the men that he worked with stopped talking to him. So he was ostracized by the men he worked with. And, people do change, because one of the men who stopped talking to him back then embraced me in 2001 at St. Mary's at a function. The nuns were leaving Natchez, the nuns who service Cathedral, the Daughters of Charity, and my father was on the program. I went. At the reception, the wife and the husband both embraced me and said, "We miss you, but we're glad you're back in Natchez." People change. And the children of this particular couple befriended me and my sisters. Their son did not. He was a staunch racist. But the girls did. And to this day, I will never identify them, because they risked being bullied at school because they played with us. And we also got it from the black community. So we got it from blacks as well. I know I did, because they thought, well, y'all think y'all are too good because you go to Cathedral. Thinking, y'all don't have a clue. Like we had a choice. We're children. Integration was going on. And what we also found out later on, I did as an adult, that in '64, two of my sisters went the first year. The two of us, there were 7 girls. We all went. 2 of us went the second year. But we found out that our Bishop Giroux at the time, didn't want too many kids from Holy Family going, because he knew the unrest and he knew what we would be facing. So I was the only black kid in my class for 2 years.
That's the story.
Okay, hi. My name is Ernestine William Pike. I went to Parchman. I went the first night. They took us out 4 days in the morning. And like they said, we got on the bus, and they said paddy wagon, but they had them black buses that they had painted black out in front of Beulah Church when we came out. Where they had told us about marching. They had already said if we march, what would happen. But Charles Evans said, so be it. And when we came out of there, they put us all in their bus. I was 23 years old. I had 2 children at home, and I was watching my mother's kids because she had gone to New Orleans for the weekend. And she said she told my grandmother when she heard it on the radio that we was going, she said, I gotta go home. So my grandmother said, well, you said you wasn't going till tomorrow. So she said, I gotta go home. That girl is a show, is they on that bus, she on there too. And I stayed all the whole time. Everybody came home that Thursday. And like they said, it was not a good feeling. We were treated like awful. But thank God. Thank God. I'm 81 years old. I am so grateful that I'm still here, and I got my faculties. They're not going too far. But anyway, that's it, you know, and it wasn't good, like they said, it was horrible.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ferguson. We have a gentleman back here who is also a survivor of that ordeal, and he's hiding behind the column. And so I'm going to ask you, if you would, to come out where we more can see you. Is that all right? Is that okay? We'll just kind of step right here. So, we want Jim to see you and others.
Yeah. I kind of vouch. My name's Stuart Foster, and what this lady just said, I went on that trip to Parchman.
If we could, this is Mr. Stuart Foster, and it might be good if we had the microphone for Mr. Foster here.
Well, I can talk loud enough.
We want
I don't have very much to say.
Here.
Oh, Lord. Yeah, Stuart Foster, my name. But, like I say, I vouch for what these ladies just said. In 1965, we marched. 10th of March, we were arrested and sent, City Auditorium. And for a little while, that Saturday, and so they loaded us up on that bus and carried us to Parchman. And the ordeal happened, bad, rough time. Hard time up there. Yes, sir. So I can about this today.
Mr. Foster, I want to ask a question that I think others are probably thinking. We've heard now from several of you who went through that horrific ordeal. What I have detected in each of you is a love, and a love that is in a way hard to comprehend given what you experienced. How have you been able to forgive, love, move forward?
Well, I'm supposed to be a Christian. I go to church. But I leave it to God. Let God handle that. So, I'm glad it worked out. It was for the better condition of our color. So that's reason.
And that participation. I'm walking around. I see. Okay, Dr. Wright. Let me get over. Jim, is this what you wanted?
People have things to ask me, I'm available. If people have things to say, let them say that. Thank you.
Here, Dr. Wright.
I'm a student of African American history, us. And I've heard the horror. I believe the horror, the results of your efforts to make things better. But I want to share with you a bright spot. One of the most politically significant highlight in my life. I had the opportunity, let me back up, I was not here and had a chance to march in '65, but I did have a chance to march in '62 at the March on Washington. I was on active duty in the military. I was 24 years old, felt like I had no reason to be there because I couldn't vote. But I was expected to go and defend the Berlin Wall. I got a letter that said, "Greetings from the President of the United States. Your friends and neighbors have selected you." If any of you got drafted, you'll remember that. But that's not what I want to say. I want to say that over 250,000 largely black folk were shoulder to shoulder. I was 24 years old, took some chances, but I had a chance to be there to hear Dr. King deliver his speech. That I did not know how important it was at that time. Over the years, I have learned that that's a privilege. That many people
wanted to be there. I did not know how fortunate I was. But that has been a part of what made my residence in Natchez possible. I thought it necessary to put your money where your mouth is. And I felt like I was a new doctor, that I could come to Mississippi and serve the people that I was talking about. And I spent 40 years on Martin Luther King, and I've enjoyed it. But I wanted to share with you the joy I felt. I thought we were finally together. Can you imagine, shoulder to shoulder, 250,000 of us?
May I respond to that? Can I respond to that you did?
I got one more point to make. One more point to make. I felt like we were together. You know, we were tribal people in Africa, and we've been at each other's throats, blah, 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 historically, but 250,000 of us were together. I heard not one foul word, no obscenity, get out my way. If you saw the pictures, everybody was just like that. But everybody was so polite. Folk had come from Galveston, Texas, all night on buses, falling asleep. I heard nobody complain about their toes being stepped on. Nobody got their pocket picked. Folks were frying chicken and giving it away. I felt something.
I want to say something because this is very important. You've said something very important. I do a lot of talking. I go around and give a lot of talks and get a lot of things from different people in different places. And the best part for me is to hear from everybody else the little, or the parts they think are little, that they played in the movement. Because when we read our history books, we hear about the big people. We see the big picture of Dr. King marching at Selma. You know, we learn about these figures, and we see the statues. But what I've known in all my years of talking about the movement is movements are made up of ordinary people doing ordinary little things. Everyone here, and this is for you, for the future too, that it's ordinary people doing. I gave a talk once to retired Teamsters in New York, and we used to give this, little thing, and same thing as we were talking. They were remembering what they were doing, and one guy stood up and he said, he said when CORE, when the Congress on Racial Equality decided as a protest to shut down the city of New York one day during the World's Fair in '64, he said, I was the guy who raised the drawbridge on the North River to stop traffic. And do you see what I'm saying? I'm saying this is what it means to be in a movement. It doesn't have to be that figure in the history books. You are making the history. You are doing it. And that's what we were trying to do. We weren't trying to do it. We were trying to get everyone else to be active. I'm sorry, I'm starting to preach.
That's beautiful.
But are you on the wall at the Civil Rights Museum in Jackson with the other freedom riders?
I'm not a freedom. I wasn't a freedom rider. I was not a freedom rider. I came 2 years after the Freedom Riders. Yeah, it's funny because people called us Freedom Riders. We were called Freedom Riders because the Freedom Riders again were so mythic almost in what they were doing that the name became generalized. Yeah.
Came afterwards to continue the movement.
Yeah.
We have one of our friends here who has some interesting things to share about the movie.
I just was going to say that Judge Mary Lee Tolles was a member of my church. Jesse B. Williams, who's the secretary for NAACP, was also a member of my church. And, the things that they went through are things that we kind of teach our youth in our church. And so, and Metcalf was also, we have a little showcase in our church with pictures of all of the people who were pivotal to the civil rights movement, who were members of our church, in our church. So every opportunity, really, they take it out of the showcase, and two of the ladies in our church make a table so that we don't forget, you know, our role in the civil rights movement.
Wow. And your name?
Angela Brooks.
Thank you.
My church is King Solomon Baptist Church.
Marilyn Tullis was also the originating founder of the museum.
Yes. And we have other founders of the museum here. Ms. Juanita Jones, her sister, Ms. Flora Terrell. So grateful. Ms. Mary White. And is Ms. White? She was here earlier. This museum is a real treasure because of these ladies who founded this museum now over 20 years ago. Thank you. Yes.
First, before I say anything, I want to say to my black brothers and sisters how I, as a member of the white race, can't correct the past, but I hang my head with tears every time I hear these stories. It's unbelievable what our community did. I wrote an article for the paper once and got a lot of bad flack that we should be, as white members of our community, we should be down on our knees begging our black brothers and sisters to teach us how not to hate. Because I'm aware of some of the indignities. I worked in 10 counties in southwest Mississippi, and I heard all the stories in all of these places. One small thing, and by the way, I can remember going to the march that was up at the courthouse. I don't remember if I still was in college. I graduated from college in '65, and I sort of think I came home and went to it. But I was a little reluctant because I was on Wall Street and Pearl Street sort of leaning toward the march. I was always a little bit afraid. And that's why I know it takes courage. And to my grandson, who is visiting from Barcelona, Spain, I want to say that you're hearing about finding your way in the world and standing up for justice. And people as young as my little grandson suffered to help their black brothers be treated with dignity. That's all they wanted, was to be treated. Now, one of the things I want to find out, and I have never been able to find out, and if anybody here has a mother or grandmother who was there, I would like for us to make a list and list their names. Marge Baroni, who was my mentor, and I was 25 years younger than her, same age as her oldest son. Marge and Father Maroney were my very best friends, and I would come home. My older brother, by the way, was at the March on Washington. He was a Catholic priest. He, against the bishop's orders, went to the March on Washington, marched throughout Mississippi with his Roman collar on. He later left the priesthood. But he was an inspiration to me, and my younger brother was inspired by the Catholic Church printing in the 60s a document called The Sin of Racism. And when I was in high school, I would always speak up about how we had to end integration, and I can assure you there was not one other student at Cathedral School in the 1950s who supported me. And I was pretty ostracized in a limited way. I never suffered what my black brothers and sisters suffered. But one thing I don't know, Marge Baroni and I decided when Natchez was about to burn down after the death of Orvis Jackson, we sent out together letters to every black and white church in the Mislew area. and we asked for women concerned about Natchez to come together. And 150 women came to the basement of St. Mary's Cathedral. We all sat and talked about what we wanted for the future. And it was the most beautiful meeting. And I have in my mind, we did not write down who came because we were scared to death. We did not take any pictures because everybody had told us, do not be in a picture. It is dangerous. Only because we had a new priest, Father Paul Hessian, and Monsignor Fulham had left were we given permission to use the church, because Monsignor Fulham probably would have thought we might bomb the basilica. But we did meet, and I had signs all over the basement of the church that the hottest place in hell was reserved, and I want my grandson to remember this. The hottest place in hell is reserved for those who in a time of crisis say nothing. So I have tried to speak up, and it's given me some pretty ugly comments from some people in this community. But what I want to know is, who were the 150 people came that night? I couldn't remember when we did it. So I had to call up Mary Lee Toes, because I was very good friends with Mary Lee and Mamie Mazik, and was on the board when they first started this institution, when it was over there by the Waterworks building, and I was working for the Planning and Development District. But those women who came, it was 125 of them. 25 were white, and one was like Grace McNeil, Gladys Smith. I would have to scratch my head to come up with their names, but I have come up with them. But I don't know, beside Mamie Lee and Mary Lee Toes, and I don't know who the black ladies were. And if anybody can help identify them, maybe they could give the names here to this center, and we could get a list of it, because it was a huge success. Only we agreed to meet on another month, and I don't know if it was the next month or if it was the next 2 months, but I was running around town one morning putting out the flyers at all the churches to announce that the meeting was going to be that week. And somebody from the Natchez Democrat came up and said, "Oh, you don't know what happened last night." And I said, "No, I don't." And I don't even know what happened. There was one of the many bombings. I don't know which bombing. There were so many horrible bombings that they run together in my brain, and I don't remember what was going on, because it was a time that it was desperately horrible. More for the blacks, but just witnessing it was terrible. And I cried when I remember holding my newborn baby in front of Mayor Nasser's store. And I have to confess that my father was on the Board of Aldermen. And according to my father, he was always trying to get concessions. And the mayor did make a concession, if y'all remember. And so the Klan bombed his brand new store out on out on Martin Luther King. And I was sitting there holding my newborn baby, and just tears rolling down my face, thinking, I want to get the hell out of here. And in fact, in the summer of '64, that you were our leader, what's his name?
Hi, Jim.
Hi. In 1964, I was a junior in college, and I went to the Freedom House and welcomed you all. And then the next day got on an airplane and went to work in Maine for the summer.
Wow.
But if anybody can help me put those names together, I would like to get a list.
Thank you, and for always being there. And remind us your name. Mary Jane.
Mary Jane Goday.
Thank you. Y'all, we are about to be out of time. And I'm going. I am. But I'm watching the time. We're trying to be out by 8 o'clock, and I want to come back around to Jim. But here, Roy.
Okay, thank you. This question is for Mr. Jim. And one of the things, we've mentioned her name several times, and I had the opportunity to be in the employ of AJFC, where Miss Mamie Head Start, where Miss Mamie Mazika was the first African American director, and she would sit us down and tell us these stories and make sure that we knew about these things. And one of the things that she spoke about, Jim, was when you guys came to town, I know that there was CORE, there was SNCC, there was NAACP, there was all the organizations. And how did you coordinate those efforts, and did each organization have different roles, or how did you guys coordinate those efforts between the different organizations at that time, or was it any conflict?
And remind us your name.
And my name is Roy O'Hill.
In 1964, all of the organizations combined in something called the Council of Federated Organizations. And this summer was organized. The shock troops of that were mostly SNCC people and CORE people, with NAACP providing legal support, and the SCLC stood in the background just as sort of an umbrella background organization that had, I think they helped a lot raise money. By 1965, COFO, the Council of Federated Organizations, had sort of separated out until the political arm of the summer of '64, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, became the active organizing unit. The NAACP, of course, had been ongoing all this time. And as we were talking about before, the national NAACP did not approve of most of the work of the Mississippi NAACP. They were much more conservative. And that's, Medgar Evers had got into a lot of trouble with the national because he was far more militant and working with people setting up voting rights things. There was, as you saw in the movie, after Medgar Evers' death, when Charles Evers took over and wanted to sort of consolidate, I gotta say, consolidate power, there was a lot of tension between the Freedom Democratic Party people who were trying to build up local organizations and local strength and local power, and the NAACP, which sort of wanted to control events and that's what you saw being played out in the movie, a little bit. Ultimately, underneath, everybody was on the same side, but the problem that was going on, as was articulated, as was said at the very end of the movie, is that they couldn't get it together because you ain't mad enough yet. And that's sort of what it took. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Yeah.
Did you ever have any encounters with Fannie Lou Hamer?
Pardon?
Did you ever have any encounters with Fannie Lou Hamer?
I met Mrs. Hamer. Yes, I met Mrs. Hamer. One of the great people of this earth, quite frankly. Yeah.
Hall of Fame.
Pardon?
She's finally in the Mississippi Hall of Fame.
But she was in the Mississippi Hall of Fame before there was a Mississippi Hall of Fame. Yeah.
I made sure that she would be
Yeah. Thank you. Yes.
Jim, we are almost out of time, but I would really like for you to share a little of that. We were talking about the 1964 Democratic Convention today, and Jim, you offered some real interesting insight to the history of that time and the Democratic Freedom Party and all of the resistance in seating the delegates from Mississippi and how they really didn't want Ms. Hamer to be the
Well, that was the NAACP. That was the national NAACP. And I need to make the distinction between the local NAAs and the national. The national NAACP was known in the 60s for being conservative. As one friend of mine put it once, he said, the philosophy of the NAACP was, I think complete integration will come in 20 years. That's what I said 20 years ago, and that's what I say today. And, it was very much like that. And when the Freedom Democratic Party presented its delegates and tried to contest the seating at the 1964 Democratic Convention, Mrs. Hamer was called for testimony before the Credentials Committee. Roy Wilkins, who was the head of the NAACP then, did not want her to testify. He was adamantly opposed to her testifying because he didn't want this woman fresh off the plantations, talking Delta. He didn't want her representing black people nationally. But the FDP insisted that she testify, and then he took it one step further. He said, well, if she's got to testify, we have to buy her a new dress. She has to look right. What? She wore her dress. She wore her own dress, and her flowered, her plant, you know, but that was the tension, and it was a real tension between, you know, the NAACP, which has again returned to some militancy and some authority, but that time it was not, weren't the best years for the NAA.
She raised her dress to show on television where
her
kicked her.
She,
the lawyer, I forgot his name, that represented him, made a big deal out of it, and it became a national event.
Yeah, that was the event when she started. Some of you may not know this. She started to give her testimony to the Credentials Committee, and it was being carried live on television. And President Johnson and his people were so upset watching it, they did not want it covered. He hurriedly called a press conference to announce something very minor to get the national attention off her testimony. And the press conference was about the 9-month anniversary of the governor of Texas having survived the Kennedy assassination attempt. I mean, that was how minor it was. But it backfired on him, because while the network switched away for his press conference, they replayed Mrs. Hamer's testimony in full on prime time that night. Wow. So that was in fact one of the successes of the convention.
Y'all, we are so blessed to have Jim here, and I have a presentation to give you in just a moment. But before I do, is there anything else anyone would like to share before we get to the close here? It's been quite a time. Yes.
Everybody who spoke and told your stories.
Yes.
We cannot let those stories die. We cannot let those stories die.
That's right. Well said.
Tell your children. Make sure you tell your children. You know, I'm going to push things one little bit further. One more anecdote. I gave a talk in Hattiesburg once, and a black USM college student came up to me afterwards, and he said, was it really as bad as all that? And my first reaction was to say, go ask your mom, go ask your grandma. But my second reaction, and I think this is important to keep in mind, was I said, the fact that you have to ask that question means we won. The fact that you can't even imagine how bad
I'll hold it for you. We have one comment here. I'll hold it for you.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Leola Harris, and I've been in Natchez, Mississippi all of my life. I never missed a boycott, and I never missed a mass meeting. We marched from China Grove Baptist Church one night. I remember distinctly that we were at China Grove on St. Catherine, and when we came out, well, we were in the choir, because I always sang in the choir, and we were saying, "We shall overcome." So Charles Edwards led the march, and they came out the church and went down the sidewalk, and then they had people over in Natchez City parking lot. The Klansmen who were there with their guns had ordered to shoot us, and we came out the church. So by the time the choir was the last one to come out, so by the time we made it to the steps to come out, Charles Edwards and the group was coming back into the church. So we did not march that particular night. There was another night when the Parchment idea, I was not sent to Parchment, but the night before we had a mass meeting, and the morning afterward, that's when they marched, and after they marched down the street, Charles Edwards asked them to give him permission to stop and pray in the street. Then they returned and came back to the church. So when they came back to the church, as he was leaving out for the second time, he said, well, everybody can't go to jail. He say, oh, and I was with Mamie Lee Mazik. He say someone need to make contact with him and Martin Luther King. So they was at that particular time they were trying to lure him into Mississippi so they could assassinate him, Martin Luther King. And so I stayed behind with Mamie Lee and two of the others at the church. So they marched and they were put in jail, like everyone else has said, the one that had gone to Parchment. I didn't have the Parchment experience, but I heard the stories about it, and I'm hearing stories about it tonight. But, you know, it was a long fight, and I marched. I worked with registration for the NAACP, and I also was served as secretary after the young, what's her name? The young lady was a secretary, Jessica B. I served as secretary after Jessica B. And we had the office set up in Metcalf House on St. Catherine. And after we moved from there, we went over to a Holy Family and set office in there. And it was under the leadership of Reverend Shed Baldwin at that particular time. I remember distinctly that we went to Aaron Henry's home in Clarksdale. We had a freedom rally that particular evening. On our way back, we had a motorcade. And all the other cars were going ahead of us, which was Charles Ed was in the first line. The young man was driving him, but there were several cars, and our car was the car that they stopped. They stopped and pulled it over, and so it was the car that Reverend Baldwin was driving, and they asked him to get off their highway, you know, because he didn't have proper driving equipment. Meant that one of his headlights were out. So we went to the service station, and we met this young black guy there. And far as we could see, they had arrested Reverend Baldwin and put him in the car, and we just could see the tail lights of a car like in a bean field. I said, oh, they're going to kill him tonight, you know. So this young man said, I know this lady that live here, and her name was Unita Blackwell, who later on became the mayor of the city of Shockey County. So the young man directed us to her house, and she was just making back from Washington, D.C. at that particular time. So we got in the car with her, and she carried us to the jail where they had carried him and locked him up like way out in the country somewhere. And so we felt, she said, that's the jailhouse right there, that's easy in. So the highway patrolman told her, you're going to be in court in the morning. So knowing Unita, she got up the next morning. We all went to court that morning. And so she posted, she said, I'm going to post his bonds for him. She said, I just made it back from Washington, D.C. She said, and they owe me anyway. So his fine was $400. So after they released it, we came back to Natchez, and they had a mass meeting that particular night at Julia Calhoun's church down on Quitman Street. And so during that particular time, the NAACP decided to send Ms. Blackwell her money back for that particular time that she had paid his fine for him. But we marched to Armstrong Tire and Rubber when George Metcalf was bombed. And during the time we marched there, it was asked us to turn around because we could be arrested because we lacked on private property or something over by Armstrong. So anyway, long story short, we did marches, and I marched there. I remember when we marched by Ulmer's department store, there was this young lady working for Ulmer's, and she just walked out, got in the line, and she never went back to work again because she said she was going to march, and she was going to march for freedom, you know, and marching for better wages for everyone else. So they send food and stuff in just up on Woodlawn. They send truckloads of food in to be distributed, and clothes as well to, you know, the ones who were out of work at the laundries and other places where they were working. But I enjoyed what I was doing, and I was always alone. I was riding by myself, and I always wondered, you know, they never picked on me or anything. And I found out later, I said the reason why, I think my dad used to work for this man, and his son, Odell Anders, was the secretary of the Ku Klux Klan, and we did not know that. But they never bothered my brothers or anything, or any of us, you know. But I decided I was going to march, and I was marching for freedom to make things better for everyone else, you know, in Natchez, Mississippi. So thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Y'all, we are out of time. One more thing.
I want to say, you know, I get a lot of flack for this because I will defend the white man, white woman, white child. I've had to do a lot of forgiveness in my life, and I've seen people change. And I will echo what Mary Jane said, because there are many white people in this community who suffered because they fought for the rights of the blacks in this community. They put their lives in danger, their spouses' lives in danger and their children's lives in danger. And I will be writing soon about one of those women, Marjorie Baroni, and bringing her to light in this community. Because as she fought along with Mamie Mazik, Father Morrissey, Father Danny Hay, Charles Evers. Father Morrissey, Father Danny Hay were white priests at Holy Family. Yes, I said Marjorie Baroni. That's who I will be bringing to light in this community, Marjorie Baroni, and what she and her family suffered from the Klan and the white community here, and her religious community like Mary Jane at St. Mary's.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alderwoman. Y'all, it has been a wonderful evening. I have a presentation to make. Oh. My goodness. Well, I want to look at that, Ms. Harris, at the end. I want to echo. Alderwoman Hall just said something that reminded me to share this. Just back during Juneteenth, we had our Kickback at NAPAC event, and we had a huge crowd like tonight, and we honored so many who have given. Over the years, we've been doing this ever since 2021. And we were able to honor Tony Byrne, who was mayor here from 1968 to 1988. And it was said then that we do have so many who are of the Caucasian race to thank. Tony Byrne was the first politician that went to the black churches and stepped out at a time when it was really not popular to do so. And he was elected primarily on the support of these disenfranchised black citizens. And the very first thing, made sure that we had black police officers, black firefighters, black employees at City Hall. He brought about the very first integration of city government. And that particular night, Mr. Bobby, thank you. Thanks to you, we had the first African American to serve as a firefighter here that night, who came into his position during that first few months of Tony Byrne's administration. I was sorry that Mayor Byrne couldn't make it tonight, but I had to share that because here we have another gentleman who said that back then he was white. And Jim, it looks like you're still white. You know, none of us have a choice. And you've done so much. And how does it feel to come to Natchez and just see firsthand the city now as compared to back then?
I'm still working through that. I'm still working through that. It's very good to be back. It's very good to feel welcomed. And I hope I get back again.
We did too. Thank you. We have something we want you to take home with you. And it's just something to express our appreciation. It's a certificate of recognition. 60 years ago, a brave young man from Connecticut came to Mississippi to make a difference. He was one of over 700 volunteers, mostly white, who were determined to join in a movement across Mississippi to help disenfranchised black Southerners reclaim their legal rights to vote. The year was 1964, Freedom Summer, and he was only 19. Little did he know that a year later, in August of 1965, he would find himself arrested in Natchez, falsely accused, and threatened by the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan. He experienced the worst of Mississippi, but he made a difference, and our state is better because of heroes like him. James Cates, Freedom Summer volunteer and patriot of the American Civil Rights Movement.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're going to have to stand for this. You're more than welcome. Did y'all hear what he just said?
No.
He, Mr. Bobby, if you'll come.
Can I give this to you?
Mr. Bobby, if you will, on behalf of the museum, come and close us out.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for showing up. And for me, telling our story is telling the story of us, the people. The struggle that we've gone through, the struggles that we still will have to face. But those challenges won't be achieved or met unless we learn the value of those sacrifices made by those that lived it in the past. To understand the gift of compromise, the gift of building a relationship, and the dream to continue to move forward so our children can experience a better place to survive. Here at the museum, it is our goal to document and keep it in a position, in a place where all of us can come and look and see what people can do together, as well as the greatness of I think, the special part of this city, to let our history be shown that we are in the forefront of building something that will affect those across the nation as well as Natchez. Thank y'all again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. Jim Case, thank you. And God bless all of you.
Mayor, thank you too.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you.